Now, the G20 is made up of 19 countries and the European Union, with South Africa being the only African member country, making the continent the least represented. The summit brings together the world's major economies, with this year's theme being One Earth, One Family, One Future. Now, according to the presidential spokesperson, Ajuri Ngelale, attracting more foreign direct investment is key to the president's agenda. Well, joining us on the square today to discuss this are our analysts. First, we have Alesta Wilcox, Public Affairs Analyst and former chairman of ICAN, Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you, Alesta, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's my utmost pleasure. Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear. It's a great pleasure to have you join us as well. Also, we have Azeez Lawal, the Managing Director, TrustBanc Group. Thank you, Azeez, for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Village Square Africa. Now, let's go straight to the conversation. Alesta, what would you say is the relevance of the G20 for Nigeria especially?
Well, the G20, like you have said in your intro, it's a group of 19 countries with the EU, so call them 20, that seeks to promote trade and investment within their conference. I mean, presently we're not having so many groups. First we have the G7, G8 with Russia involved. These are the heavily industrialized countries of the world. You're now having BRICS, the new move by Russia to get some other countries to be involved. So these are groups of industrialized nations, very strong economies that want to promote trade, promote investment, promote common interest, to serve common interests among their foes. Sincerely, I'm so surprised that Nigeria is not a member. It's surprising that Nigeria is not a member. If South Africa, which is the second largest economy in the continent, is a member, then I will just be worried why Nigeria is not a member. But
what do you say? What do you say that it has anything to do with the fluctuation in our economy as a country?
No. There's no economy that is not fluctuating. Every economy in the world is fluctuating. There's always shocks about economies. There's nothing that is on a straight line. I remember a recession from 2010, 11 started from Europe, moved to America. It only hit Africa last. So there's always fluctuation in every economy. But the fact is, the size of your economy is also part of your strength. Nigeria is a democratic country, just as South Africa. Maybe I'm just thinking a lot. Maybe my brother the banker will help me. Maybe they are looking at industrialization as part of those that will be their member, because South Africa is more industrialized than Nigeria. There's more industrial development in South Africa than in Nigeria. Maybe, but as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria being invited into that meeting is an invitation, shows that Nigeria cannot be toyed with, cannot be left out of such a group, because Nigeria is a big economy, the biggest in Africa, and Nigeria has potentials. So if Nigeria is invited, that means Nigeria is respected. And I think the next set of it will be for Nigeria to seek for full membership of that bloc. I don't know if they've closed the doors, if they just want to be 20, but it will be hold on our president, who was invited, to make, if the country thinks so, to make a strong case for Nigeria to be a member.
Well, very rightly said. And just like you said, the fact that Nigeria got invited means that there is an establishment of relevance. But according to Alesta, we need the bankers' input. So Azeez, what is your take on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's the significance of us joining, right?
Yes, so he was talking about the reason why Nigeria is not a member of the G20 nation, even though South Africa, which is the second largest economy in the continent, is a member. So he was trying to give different reasons, and he said his brother, the banker, which is you, of course, could help clarify that. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Alesta. Yeah, so I mean, there are parameters to become a member of G20, right? And if we judge by indices, parameters, I mean, pairing it with the current nations on that list, it's not like there's been a strong case for Nigeria before now. I mean, one of the major reasons why we are being considered now is the fact that for Modi, that's the Prime Minister of India, the key theme of this particular 18th session is the fact that they are looking at more inclusiveness. And looking at more inclusiveness, they are looking at African Union, including Nigeria, which is, I mean, African Union itself, which is a bloc of about 55 nations, right? So the past, there's really not much to be worried about concerning the past. It's not like we had an edge over the countries that were there. I mean, comparing, talking about parameters, right? If we specifically talk about financial market, for example, I mean, South Africa has over 200 companies listed on its exchange, while Nigeria is struggling to have up to 170, right? So there are parameters, and if you look at the past, not much to be said about why we must be there. But going forward, and particularly looking at the theme of this year, which is more promoting global inclusiveness, definitely Nigeria has a strong case to be a member of G20.
Okay, I'm still going to stay with you, Azeez. Now, we're still talking about the finance when it comes to the membership of the G20. Ajurin Galale, the spokesperson for the presidency, mentioned that attracting more foreign direct investment is top of the agenda for the president. Now, that brings me to my question. Has Nigeria built enough credibility to attract more foreign investment as they wish to?
Yeah, thank you. Credibility is a very big word there, right? Yes. So, I'm talking about credibility. To start with, quite a number of the G20 nations, they have a free float. Though you have a situation whereby the central banks comes to intervene occasionally, but largely their exchange is on a free float. So, I mean, that gives an indication. Maybe one of the reasons why we are currently on a free float, unlike what we used to have before, right? Even though we also intervene these days, right? So specifically on credibility, if you judge by some of the policies of the new administration, it's a very big step in the right direction when it has to do with global credibility to participate with the big boys. For decades now, a lot of nations have been advising institutions that Nigeria should remove subsidy, float their exchange rates. I mean, these are things that we have now done, so we can start having those conversations. And why we should do that? Is it credible for us to do that, to be a part of this bloc? I mean, definitely. Right. For the G20 nations, they constitute about 80% of global GDP, right? And 75% of world trade goes through that block, and the population of that block is about a third of the world. So we are good enough, we are credible enough, and there are enough credible reasons for us to be a member of that block. Thank you.
Okay, but Alesta, let me come to you. Still talking about credibility. If we look at the numbers, majority of our manufactured goods do not even make it out of the continent. So, I mean, maybe in addition to what Azeez has said, but what exactly do we have to offer as the supposed giant of Africa?
Well, if I was taking from you as this talk, in terms of credibility, I think the parameters might be different, and we might not shy away from the fact that there are a lot of policy inconsistencies and policy gaps that hitherto such global body might also be looking at. Well, Nigeria is not lowest on the ladder, even with some of the countries there. You have Argentina there, you have Pakistan there, and you have Saudi Arabia in that block. And these are some of the countries too that you cannot really vouch with some of the indices that we are talking about here in terms of human rights, in terms of institutionalized institutions like the judiciary and all. Yes, admittedly, Nigerians have a lot of flaws. People find it difficult to access justice. Disputes, judicial issues translate too far and all whatnot. Sentiments come to reign. There is a lot of government intervention and abuse of power and privileges We understand those far better. Of course, they are not strange to Nigeria. If countries like Argentina should be there and all what. But see, one thing that Nigeria has is this resilience in the economy. No matter what you do, because the market is big, and it's always available, Nigeria will always, have an edge. Stand out. We know what the telcos are doing in Nigeria compared to what they are doing in other countries. And we know what the unfortunate thing is the fact that we don't attract institutional investors. We attract portfolio investors mainly. People that just come in and they see the potentials, they quickly go in, quickly make the money and jump out. That is the problem we have in Nigeria. We don't have institutional long-term investors that will come with their capital and put their capital for a long period of time. And that's what we should be attracting. Nigeria has a lot of potentials untapped and open in all the sectors. Call it tourism, whatever sectors you are talking about, because the population is there and the consumption pattern is, Nigeria has one of the weakest consumption pattern. We are consumers of every and anything that comes our way. So there will be a lot of interest in Nigeria as a investment destination. Yes, we still have problem with our banking system in terms of capacity to finance very big projects and all whatnot. But these are things that, with inflow of more capital, these things can be addressed. Now, talking about export, unfortunately and sadly, we have not been able to get it right to be a manufacturing hub. Unfortunately, too, while the government is not enforcing certain policies, the citizens are also very guilty of this fact, because we prefer foreign product to our domestic product. If it's not foreign, it's not okay. And that is why today, Broad Street has been converted to Market Street. Go to Broad Street today in Lagos and Marina, every offices there has been converted to shops. And what are they selling? Foreign products, shoe, bag, wristwatch, phones, all whatnot. It's sad. And so I think that going forward, this conference should afford the president an opportunity to make a strong case for institutional investors, and coming back home to reorientate the minds of Nigerians to the fact that if you want to eat omelette, you must break the egg. This is no time to pamper anybody. Government must be sincere and serious in reorientating our minds so that we can be export oriented. We can be investment and productive minded than consumption. Because what we do now is just consumption and more consumption and more consumption. I think it will not take us anywhere.
Okay, this is still in line with attracting potential foreign investors. Azeez, now, if we're looking at the perception of how the other continents or countries see Africa, Nigeria especially, would we say that we're still in the era of, them viewing us as a country to be exploited? Or would we say that we have graduated, for lack of a better word to use, to a country that can actually be partnered with?
Yeah, thank you. That's quite subjective, right? So, for as far as partnership is concerned, it's about the interest of the person also partner with you. So, depending on how deliberate you are, that's a target partner, quote and unquote. Depending on how deliberate you are with your intentions, your initiatives, and your policies, is what is going to shape the relationship of the person that's looking at you, right? Over the years, you've seen that it's not like Africa as this coordinated one voice that we bring to the table to negotiate or have serious conversations with any party that may be interested in us, right? So what we just have is really, and what we have been saying for decades, and potential. We have the population, we have the resources, but then there's not been deliberate efforts or constructive efforts where parties are united. Parties in this case, even if we get not all the 55 countries in Africa, if we get just 40% of them coming together to have it, to have a unique stand, then we can be talking about that kind of they are not going to exploit us, our conversation. But what we still see now is more of individuals going for individual countries, right? So that's why talking about credibility in that regard, I mean, you really have to speak per nation, right? So back to the conversation of Nigeria. If Nigeria has made itself credible enough for these constructive conversations that will lead to development rather than more of exploratory. I mean, we now have to narrow that down again to this administration if they have made enough moves for partners to see us as credible partners, worthy partners. I mean, like Mr. Alesta said, right? There are still those are legacy issues that still have to be addressed, right? But there has been some significant steps in the last 2-3 months. Again, I would have to mention that again, that is showing that we are moving in a kind of right direction, particularly unification of exchange rates, floating of the naira. But there's still a very big challenge there, which is I'm an investor. I want to come and partner with Nigeria. I'm bringing $2 million in today. Let's even say I'm not a foreign direct, a foreign portfolio investor. I'm a foreign direct investor, right? I want to leave this nation. Maybe after 5 years, I want to repatriate my funds, right? We've still not been able to answer that question. At any point I want to leave, can I actually have the dollars to repatriate my capital? We may complain about foreign portfolio investors. I mean, portfolio investment is portfolio investment, regardless of how long I want to stay. If I come and buy local securities in Nigeria, maybe I buy treasury bills in Nigeria, and it's 90 days, it matures, and I want to go back with my dollars and possibly my profits. Is there that liquidity for me to go back? Those are still very, very big issues. Those are policy issues that we have to address. So back to the specific question, which is, like I said, is very subjective. Are we worthy enough to be partnered with, or if it's more of going to be exploring the weaknesses within the continent and, of course, Nigeria? Sadly, for some time, that is still going to remain until we have that strong concerted unity that we can use to properly negotiate at the table. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Azeez. Now, Alesta, let's spotlight the president's attendance at the G20 summit. Now, he plans to attend the summit with well over 20 CEOs and captains of industries. Can we say that that is an attempt at a show-off? I mean, in a good way, because if you are planning to attract foreign investors, probably you're trying to show that you have what can be invested in, and you have people who are strong enough in that sense. So would we say that it's an attempt at a show-off, because these people are only going there as spectators?
Well, thank you. I don't think really they are spectators, because these are captains of industry. These are the best hands in terms of industry, in terms of investment we have in the country, and by extension in the African continent, because some of these names are high caliber names that you have. So if it's not a show off, it's a show of strength as to what you have. And also, these are persons who knows how to cut deals over the period. And you are going there to meet other people who maybe some of these persons will not have been able to meet, even in their own private and individual business endeavors and capacity. Now, when you go with a president, you have a larger, a wider audience, or a wider capacity to reach out to those that you think you will have wanted to reach before now. Look, there is no man is an island, and there is nobody that has it all. So at every point in time, you need somebody that will hold you by the hand and take you through. And what is the interest? The bigger interest is for Nigeria to benefit from something. So if maybe a Dangote or a Tony Lumelu is in the trip, of course, there are some persons, there are some institutions that Tony will not have been, but you are talking about people coming from Saudi Arabia, people coming from Argentina, people coming from Brazil, and their own businessmen are coming. They are not just coming like one-man riot squad. They are coming with their own group. And such environment brings a lot of persons or captains of it, because it's not Nigeria that's going to go with their own. Other people are coming with their own. And so there will be roundtable discussions. So there will be exchange of ideas, there will be exchange of contacts. And so that is where the space is widened up. So they are not show off, but rather it's a show of strength to the fact that these are people that will knock the deals. Now they also go with some ministers that are key, to some of the things that is the man is looking for. The president is looking for investments. So the minister of trade and investment is on the trail. The minister is looking for funds. The minister of finance and minister of the economy is on the bill. The minister is looking for, today the IT world is what is ruling. The IT has taken over the world. So the minister of digital economy is key. So these are persons that will meet their counterparts in the other sphere for them to be able to help them, because the president cannot be in all the meetings. Certainly, the president will be maybe at the assembly to deliver seminar speeches. The president might have one or two roundtable, go there, deliver the keynote address, have another one. So there is a lot. He's going to spend a total of 6 days, I understand. So there's a lot of activities that's going to go on, and Nigeria has prepared themselves and get set that in all those engagements there will be persons that will attend to their colleagues in all those spheres. So that's why you have a wide range. You have people from the banking, you have people from manufacturing, you have people from all the areas, oil and gas, telecom, and you have people from all the areas of the economic areas in Nigeria. So these are persons that are going to meet their counterparts, open more doors, and see how they can flow. And let me just say something in respect to what my brother just said. You see, until you begin to present yourself as credible, you begin to present yourself as worthy to be treated as a partner, you will always be treated as somebody that is open for exploit. If you don't close your house and put your house in order, nobody will, the thief will not come and tell you to close your house. The thief will come there to steal. But if you close your house and you have something of value that somebody needs, he will come and negotiate with you. So until Nigeria, in particular, let me leave Africa, Nigeria, until we close our ranks, until government policies are directed positively, not with interest, not interest making policy, not specific interest, but directed squarely for the interest of the country. And until the citizens begin to key in properly into the country's vision, into the country's dream, to the country's drive, until then, we will not present a formidable force, and so goes Africa. If we believe in consumption, if it's not foreign, it's not the best. Even our footwears, our jackets, our dresses, if it's not foreign, it's not. So they will keep, if you have that mentality, they will keep exploiting you. But if you say, look, we have it and we want to be part of our own, then they will come for negotiation, because they also need you. They will come for negotiation because their own market will suffer. And it's not better. Look, for 22 years now, we've been having phone, and there is no one factory, no one manufacturing concern that produces, even to say, let's even say the casing of telephones. Let's even say the earpiece of telephone. Is there any country producing it in Nigeria? Is there any concern producing in Nigeria? But we believe that we can take our capital to China in one small shop. So they will always see you as open for exploitation. So until you make yourself strong, you give yourself value and honor, and say, look, if you want us to buy phones, come and establish your factory here. If you want us to use your earpiece, come and establish a factory here. Then and only then, that we can say, okay, we are ready for partnership and not for master-servant relationship. As it is now, we are still on master-servant relationship, but I hope that things will change and change.
Hopefully so. Very strong points right there. Thank you so much, Alesta, for that. You're still watching Village Square Africa, and we are talking about the G20 summit coming up on the 9th and 10th of September 2023 at New Delhi, India. We'll go on a short break now, and when we come back, VSA continues. Thank you for staying with us on the program. Now, the G20 summit will have the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, and all other financial institutions in attendance. And it is hoped that Nigeria will leverage on that opportunity to form new alliances and find new partners as well. But is it that simple? I still have my guest with me, Alesta Wilcox, the Public Affairs Analyst and former Chairman, ICAN Lagos, Nigeria. And of course, we also have Azeez Lawal, Managing Director, TrustBanc Group. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for still being with me on the program.
Thank you. It's my
All right,
pleasure.
now, before we went on the break, we established, gentlemen, that the attendance of these powerhouses with the president is not just a show off. According to you, Alesta, it's a show of power. It's a show of what we have. Now, I would also like for us to look at it from the point of view that this is not just a meet and greet. And it is believed that every country has its own strategy to attract investors and potential partners. Well, maybe one of ours is to go with these powerhouses. But Azeez, do you think that there is any other strategy that we're leveraging on at this point?
Yeah, thank you. Before I comment on strategy, right, which is also related to this, I completely agree. I completely agree with Mr. Alesta when he said that going with those industry leaders is a show of strength, and because you're talking about Otedola, Dangote, Elumelu. These are proven entrepreneurs and business moguls. They control significant part of the companies that are listed on the exchange. Individually, each one of them controls companies that are worth as much as 1 trillion naira each, right? If you look at Elumelu, United Bank for Africa, Transport, Afrifood, United Capital, you look at Otedola, you're talking about Geregu, you look at Dangote, you're talking about Dangote Cement, Dangote Sugar, combined market capitalization over 3 trillion or close to that for this tree. So it's a real sure strength, and that naturally flows into the strategy, right? If you look at for a very long time, I'm not sure we've had this kind of representation at this level. So it could be one of the strategy of this current administration, going with people that have the caliber to engage in those kind of serious conversations, even from the government nominations. Minister for Finance is going to be there. Minister for Trade is going to be there. Minister for Foreign Affairs. It's unlike what we used to have before, where for a kind of event like this, you may be hearing the Minister for Culture and things like that, right? Also, that could be one of such strategy, right? Then also, some of the policies, like I've mentioned, some of the policies that we have seen since this administration came in, they are speaking to they are speaking to events and outings like this and conversations like this. You can boldly go to events like this, looking back and saying that's come. I have a free float, despite the occasional intervention by the CBN. It's a major point for you to start having those conversations. Investors need to know that at any time they bring in their investments, there is that comfort of free entry and free exit, right? So so the fact that some of these reforms have taken place, it's clearly in hindsight a strategy towards having this kind of conversation, right? But specifically, from what we've heard the spokesman of the president say, right, where they said that they are still looking at some of the pros and cons and possible risk before they totally accept this. We've not seen any specific strategy outlined from them or some of the initiatives they are looking at. But one thing is very clear from some of the conversations they've had, that instead of going to borrow more debt because Nigeria needs foreign investment. We need as simple as I can make this conversation be, we need as much dollars as possible, right? The options available to you. You have the option of going to borrow at the Eurobond market. Globally, countries are raising rates, so it's going to be very, very expensive, particularly for a country where about 24 to 30 billion dollars of of our debt is foreign debt. That's a lot compared to our reserve. Reserve is still around $33 billion, right? So the option to borrow, that room to borrow, is really not there. So you need to have conversations like this, where you can talk about trade, where you can talk about how you can bring in foreign direct investment, right? So, so looking from what we've heard a spokesperson say specifically, you can tell that there is a strategy towards bringing foreign direct investments instead of using the debt option of bringing foreign currency. You can tell that is it. You can tell that some of the reforms leading to this, it's one of their deliberate plans to have this kind of conversations, like like Mr. Alesta said, going to the event itself with a strong nomination. It's a very strong show of strength, which is a kind of strategy on its own. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Azeez. Now, Alesta, speaking of foreign policy and the need for a reconstruction or a restructuring, rather, do you think that there is a case of misplaced priority on the African continent? Now, this is why I said that. We've had several coups in the past few months, let's say a year or more, and with these coups, Benin Republic, Gabon, and the rest of them, we are quick as an African continent to weigh in on the situation, especially, of course, along with the AU and all. But when it comes to, deliberating on issues that will help us as a continent in terms of economy and all of that, we kind of lag behind. So is there a possibility that we have misplaced priorities on the continent?
Oh, certainly you can be sure of that. I think at this point we should do it with that toga, with that mantra of saying Africa remains the centerpiece of our foreign policy. We've had that for too long. I started hearing things like that as a very small boy, during the time of during the time of Murtala Mohammed, when he first made that statement, Africa remains the centerpiece of our foreign policy. In successive administration, they've taken that as their byline and when it has to do with foreign policy. But I think it is time for us to reassess our total foreign policy components and architecture at this point, because it's not paying us to make Africa a centerpiece of our foreign policy. Right now, yes, we need Africa because of our affinity to our brothers and sisters. But at the same time, if the continent or most as part of the continent is dragging others backward, then everybody needs to reassess his own objectives and know that, like they say in local palace, all man for himself, God for us all. Africa will remain our Africa, but everybody needs to chart a course that will promote his own economy, his own promote stability, his own democracy, and all whatnot. Now, with respect to reactions to coups, yes, it is customary at every point in time when there is an issue, statements are issued, meetings are held. If it's the one you can solve, like they were able to solve Gambia, they solve it. The one that they cannot solve because of lack of capacity, they continue to just let it fly. But the truth of the matter is, AU has not helped Africa at all. AU has been a total lame duck, and I keep saying it. Maybe because credibility of leadership in Africa is lacking. That is why you have in Africa, you have sit-tight leadership, sit-tight leaders. Yes, it's not strange to Africa, but it's predominant in Africa. And we have it in other parts of the world too. Even in Europe, we have places like Belarus and all, and even Russia. You have them, this kind of sit-tightism, holding their people captive and sit tight and hold. But Africa seems to have a lesser share in that malady, and so when you have such situation, your peers review becomes difficult. You cannot hold your peers accountable. You cannot talk to your peers. When you yourself, you have the tendency, the propensity to do what your peers are doing. So how do you talk to peer review in Africa is totally absent, and because nobody can talk to them because the other person is still as guilty as you are. And then the issue instead of corruption, when a larger percentage of the leadership in Africa is corrupt, endemically corrupt. Even the ones that are showing signs of brilliance in terms of governance, they are also endemically corrupt. because institutions are weak. It is only those that can afford to. When even you are showing signs of brilliance of doing things right, like everyone uses Rwanda as an example. But the fact that a leader does not want to leave office after so many years shows there's something you are hiding. So despite that you are showing brilliance, there's still something you are hiding.
Right.
And that is the corruption we're talking about.
Okay.
So, for me, until Africa begins, sorry, let me just tie this here. For Africa begins to show themselves as worthy to engage in the world, we'll keep remaining with flip-flopping our foreign policy.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Alesta. Now, Azeez, I would like to ask this point blank. Is attending summits the solution to our problems, especially financially? I mean, looking at developed countries, they focus more on strategic partnerships in the back end, and then they come and solidify these partnerships on the global stages, of course, like the G20 summit. So is Nigeria's approach the right approach?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Nigeria's approach as a nation does not look like the right one, right? But then we're looking at the approach of, which is sad, right? We are looking at the specific approach of the president. He has this history of strategically engaging his team, and before moving, there's a strategy with Bola Tinubu, particularly from what we've seen in Lagos, right? So you can tell that they are not just moving; they are moving based on a strategical framework, and it's always very clear from some of the things he's done in the past, where he provides the environment for private businesses, foreign investors to thrive. We've seen that kind of landmark and tradition and investment all over Lagos, right? So, as a nation, we don't have that foreign policy or strategy base where you know that every other 4 years for any administration that comes in, they are going to leverage on that platform or ride on that particular strategy. But as an administration, I'm kind of convinced that they have a strategy towards attracting foreign direct investments.
Great.
Thank you.
Alesta, now still talking about strategy, it seems like Africa as a continent is oblivious of the fact that there is a need for, maybe not need, but there is a space for competition in the sense that competitiveness within these continents is allowed. Now, I'm saying that because is it not possible that Nigeria as a country and Africa as a continent finds a country or a continent to displace when it comes to maybe manufacturing goods or exportation or things like that, and leverage on that to gain ground?
Well, that is it. Well, it should be the right way to go. Even under the auspice of the EU, should be the right place to go. Even all the regional blocks, we have too many regional blocks. We have the ECOWAS, we have the Central African bloc, we have the South, the SADC, we have so many blocks in Africa, and it will have been a beautiful thing, like just like you pointed out, for Africans to be inward and be competitive among themselves. Remove so many trade barriers. No, the president of Kenya was very, very sad when he was talking about moving within Africa. The kind of inhibitions we have within Africa, and that's why I think he went ahead to say he's opening up his country for everybody coming in to be visa on arrival. The problem of assessing each other in Africa is terrible. It seems that we are more interested in having partnerships abroad than having partnerships domestically within ourselves. And it's a sad, it's a sad reality that we are facing today in Africa. And so competitiveness becomes zero because we are all looking at foreign goods. And that is why the Asians, the Chinese, they can come in, exploit us, and move away. And they still want us to come to their country and invest capital in their country. So it should be a reawakening of the African continent. And I think Nigeria should lead that because, like Azeez I just said, without singing the praise of the president, we've known something about him developmentally that he could change a situation if given the opportunity and the time and the necessary support. We saw how we saw his way of doing things and how Lagos became after he took over from, become governor of Lagos, and successively we've seen that happen. So it is my view and belief that with direct and strong policies and active support, backed up with strong legislations, we can begin that process in Nigeria to lead the entire Africa with our competitive advantages and be able to unite Africa in that way, so that we stop depending. Because even if we have to pick among ourselves in terms of raising capital within Africa, we can. I don't think the continent is that poor that we cannot create enough capital among ourselves in order to develop. If all the money that has been stolen, if all the funds that has been stolen and stashed away abroad remains in Africa, do you know what the continent will be? So the incidence of corruption, the incidence of bad leadership, the incidence of seatitism, and knack for foreign taste and a taste for foreign capital and foreign goods is what is driving the continent backward. And it looks like in every successive administration all over Africa, the first place you do is to visit Europe and thinking that is all that you can have. And at the end of the day, you click glasses and snap and take good photographs and put them in your album. And at the end of the day, you don't get anything substantial. Maybe one or two portfolio investors come in and the next day they are out. So that narrative should change. We can as Africans find a way around it through our institution. I mean, that was what Gaddafi was. That was what the late Mama Gaddafi was championing before he was cut short in his. I mean, I'm not his fan, but I know that's what he was championing. But we've lost it, and so we can still reignite it.
Right. Thank you so much, Alesta. Now, let's also talk about something that is somewhat the crux of the matter, and very quickly. Now, the spokesperson to the presidency, Ajuri Nglele, also mentioned that there is a consideration to join the G20 nation. And I remember Alesta mentioned earlier on the show that for some reason, maybe the G20 is called the G20. I would just like for us to know very quickly, Azeez, if there is a consideration to join the G20 membership, do you think that the fact that Nigeria was invited as a country should count for something? And if at all Nigeria gets to join the G20 nation, what is in it for the country? Very quickly.
The invitation, does not really count for much, to be very honest, because it's a tradition of G20 to invite nations every other year. Right, but then it's locally it gives a kind of a confidence booster, right? But if you judge particularly from the reaction of the market, typically when you get strong news like this, the Eurobond market is usually a very good strong measure of if that's a good move. The markets did not really react to it, right? Even the coup in Gabon impacted the market more than this invitation, to tell you that it's not really significant, because every other time G20 invites countries, right? Again, what we stand to get from it, we stand to get, like I mentioned earlier, right? That the countries in this bloc, they control about 80% of global GDP, right? About 75% of global trade, and 2/3 of the world's population is within that block. So you know that there is a conversation that is going to be held around your trade. There is a conversation that is going to improve your GDP in terms of trade. There is a possibility that some of your debts may be considered, because G20 had a history of forgiving debts to members, because we saw that during COVID when they suspended debt payments owed by poorer countries within the bloc, right? So there is that possibility, and of course, ultimately, foreign direct investments, which Nigeria desperately needs at the moment. Thank you.
Spot on. Thank you so much, Azeez. Alesta, very quickly, in few seconds, what are your hopes for the G20 summit? What do you hope that Nigeria achieves, especially from the summit?
Well, the low-hanging fruit will be the fact that some deals will be signed, and you can be too sure that it will not be an empty, coming back home empty. You might come back home with a few deals here and there, with those captains of industry. So we should expect a few flow of some foreign, some investments from abroad, and then you also expect that if Nigeria is applying to join, they will give them some conditions. So we expect some other institutional changes in Nigeria. Economic space, political space, governance structure. We expect some changes if Nigeria is really applying to join, and there's provision for Nigeria to join, because you cannot just come as you are. You must put your house in order. But a quick fix may be a few deals that will also impact on our GDP with respect of foreign investment coming in, employment opportunities for companies that might open shop, or the ones that might increase their level of investment. So there'll be something. It can be empty. It cannot be an empty trip. None of these trips have been empty, but it is how you sustain that and how you prepare to receive those investments when they are coming in. Certainly, there'll be something for the country or with this, because you don't go to such meetings and come except you didn't go prepare. You went for jamboree. But I think there was good preparation. There was good strategy for this meeting, and so something will come back home for Nigerians. So it will definitely impact on the GDP.
Right, very insightful conversation it has been on the show today, and thanks to my guests for that. Alesta Wilcox, Public Affairs Analyst, former chairman also of ICAN at Lagos, Nigeria, and of course, Managing Director at TrustBanc Group, Azeez Lawal. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.